is the Diary of a Lady Band Director podcast, brought to you by the Passion Is Network.
My son is itching to be in the camera. Come on, little boy. Come in.
Me too. I didn't know when we were starting.
Go ahead. Everybody say hi to Matthew.
Hello.
It don't matter.
I didn't know you were starting.
I'm telling you, he could be doing nothing all day. As soon as I get down to this laptop, here he come. So go ahead and say hi, blue-haired bandit.
I said hi.
Okay.
I didn't know when you were starting.
I had to let him have his moment of stardom, because if I didn't, he was gonna be the little man lurking in the background. I said, boy, get out this camera. Hello, ladies. We are back together again. Episode 8. And I feel like episode 8 is a doozy. It's a doozy. And hopefully we can address some things, and we can kind of have a healthy discussion behind something that, my timeline for since I started being in social media and actually paying attention, like, it's been buzzing, and I'm like, what's going on? And, after the pandemic, I thought, maybe things would calm down. People had a new, collected mind over some things, but apparently not. We still in a mess sometimes, and hopefully this discussion will be a discussion that everybody needs to hear. This is not this, and this is my disclaimer. Like, I'm trying to learn, like, the art of media, where you're not being judgmental. You're just bringing facts, and you're talking about the perspectives that are shared about this very sensitive topic. So it's gonna be real. We don't sugarcoat sugar honey iced tea, but it's gonna be a real discussion. And I think for a panel of women of color who are in the music field, I think we can approach it from a different angle that others might not have it. So this was a viewer's choice. It kept coming up. I was like, okay, we're gonna have to do this one. Okay. So here we are. So this is called Breaking Bad. And I actually had to look it up, because Breaking Bad is a show that I have not actually seen, but I've heard the phrase before. And Breaking Bad basically means when someone makes the conscious decision to do something that they know is incorrect. And so such befitting in the band world, not just the band world, but we're going to talk about, music education specifically. There's some people who decide to break bad, and hopefully we can help some people make good choices. Hopefully we can help some people hold some other people accountable for making good choices, or even just see some of those pitfalls. So I'm gonna start in the dirt. We're gonna start right here. The first question: above the law, do you think traditional style band culture operates outside of normal societal rules and guidelines for conduct? Do you think people just kind of feel like, I'm the leader of the camp and I kind of can do what I want? I'm not going to take this first question. I asked. It's on y'all, the panel. Y'all scared?
That's a lot to unpack. Go ahead, Lauren.
Did y'all read
Yeah, it's I guess this entire topic is a slippery slope. We, as people who marched in traditional bands, I know all of us had band directors who felt like they were above the law. There was a particular band director that was known as the law at FAMU. So a lot of old school, I'm not trying to, I am kind of being facetious, but, so a lot of our old school band directors, they're used to having carte blanche over their programs. So like usually the administration or the principals or whoever was a leader of school, they didn't mess with the band program. They, that was their thing. This is what they're doing. they're going to leave them to it. Partly because they don't understand music, partly because they don't care to understand it. So with that being said, a lot of our former band directors operated that way. You know, this is my ship and I'm running it. And I do like that aspect of it. I feel like a lot of music programs would be so much better without a lot of interference from administration and, just let them do their jobs. But also, band directors need to be cognizant of their actions. They can't do everything they used to do, especially we keep bringing it up post Robert Champion. You can't do anything you want to do. You can't say anything you want to say. You can't go anywhere you want to go. Post Robert Champion. Now post COVID, you can't go anywhere you want to go. So you always have to check in with your school leadership. I've had band directors that back in the day, they used to cuss the principal out to their office. And, that was that, So you tell the principal, do your job and I do mine. And that's it, not getting fired, he was fine. But, that eventually caught up to them and they ended up being let go because they got let go for something post Robert Champion. So I do feel like, and because we came under them, a lot of us, a lot of current band directors, by the way, I'm not a band director, but a lot of current band directors think they can operate under that same mentality. And the hard truth is you can't. You cannot be for your reputation, for your family, for your own sake, you can't operate that way. You have to talk to the kids a little bit more. They want to know, they want to understand why. You have to be an open book to everybody, from the students to the parents to the administration, even to the school board, on what your plans are. And yeah, I'll end it at that.
I think you made a good point about band directors typically operating kind of in an island by themselves. And I can speak honestly, it was seldom that administrators came down my wing. They don't come down there. And they just don't, because like you said, unless they were in the band or they were in any type of performing arts, that's just like the whole department. They never came down to, I didn't get a lot of pop-up visits in my classroom. People didn't often really understand what was ever going down there. They just knew that they saw performances and they saw what the end product was, but they seldom come down our wings or our halls to actually interact with us. And I think unfortunately, to a certain type of person, not having kind of that big brother watching you kind of does allow you to be able to make some decisions that aren't good, or some that are actually really good that may not necessarily go with the general practice. But band is different. The arts are different. They're just different. And I guess you got a good point. Anybody want to chime in?
Well, I was going to say, in the situations that I've been around, it's more so been the band hall is the place that has the most discipline, because some of the schools, two of the schools that I worked at were they were a lot. My first school was a riot within the first 3 weeks of school. So my little corner that I had, in our building, it was me and then 3 other teachers, and we were all women, and we did not play that mess. Don't come in the 600 building acting a fool. You already know what the time it is when you come in here. But conversely, when I used to take, my kids places, I would see other schools with kids, acting up in the stands and just not carrying themselves in a way that I would allow my students to carry themselves. I'm not going to judge, how you want to keep your house. But I do definitely think that there's, it's very different across the board. Because like I said, I see it when I look at other programs. I'm like, I look back at my kids, y'all better not sit down, But, it it is something that I wish that we saw a little less of, though, for sure.
We have that authoritative, like we kind of operate with an authoritative system. Like we kind of do operate from a do as I say. This is my house. This is the band room. You don't come down here and get to act any kind of way. Like it is it can be militaristic, not in a bad way, because order is good. We need order because often our class sizes are double, triple, quadruple the size of an English class. So we got to be able to maintain order. But I often wonder, is that the point where it goes to people's head? You know what I mean? That power, because it's a sense of power. Like nobody checking me, nobody coming down this wing to see if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And the kids, they fall in line to that, especially, our performing arts kids, our band kids, they fall in line to it. If we good at what we do and they like what they're doing, they will just shut up and do. And I think maybe that shut up and do mentality is like the perfect storm for someone to take advantage of.
I was just about to say band is like military. Well, marching bands do come from military. I think I said this before in Spanish. Marching band is banda de guerra, which means war band. So in that setting, your band director is the commander and nobody else, and if you have, leadership trying to mess that up, they get offended. Like, you left me to do this task, so allow me to do it. A lot of kids, they either love the band or they fear the band or both. It's weird. At my high school, talk about my high school director, he crazy. How can y'all do that? But we were 10% of school at the same time. So we were very loyal to him. And we love what he did. We love the experiences that he displayed to us, like traveling to different colleges, playing for different NFL teams. So we were very loyal to that. So, you would have to either fall in or not be a part of it at all. Band was for a certain type of person. And it was the most disciplined group, but often the biggest group in your campus or in your school.
I think Justin just brought up a real good point about it. It's an indoctrination. It really is. I work for a charter school. I work for KIP, and we call the whole month of new students hypnotizing, where they are purposefully indoctrinating the students to behave a certain way. And so Justin said, but that can kind of affect our egos. And I think ultimately a lot of this mess happening has a lot to do with abuse of power. It's power. Like, there's the act, and we look at the act like this is so egregious, but there's even a kind of more sinister, more dark side that we don't address. And it's that abuse of somebody who we feel is weaker than, and we can manipulate. And I'm not going to put gender in this. It doesn't matter, boy or girl. Like, there's just this sense of like, I know you're not going to tell because you've already proven how much you're going to say about what we do down here. And just being honest, raise your hand if you've been cussed out by your band director. But like, it just kind of rolls off your back and you just kind of get used to it. But at the same time, there's abuse of power with it. So I'm gonna ask this question. Does age and or sex play a role in the frequency of these band scandals? Is it because people real young and they just too close to the students? I don't know. Or they old and they go back to that regiment where there was no Me Too movement. So you just feel like you could do whatever you want to do. And you never caught up with the times. Like, it never clicked. So I don't know. Do you think age and or sex has anything to do with the frequency of these situations?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. To the first question, as a band director, you're responsible for a whole lot of people, and you're responsible for making sure that that whole lot of people is doing the same thing at the same time. So yes, there are some elements where it's conducted in a militaristic fashion, and what comes along with that is rank. And a lot of times people will pull rank. You give people an assignment. This person is your section leader. This person is in charge of all the woodwinds and the brass. And you go up the chain, but spit rolls downhill. Typically speaking, the spit will roll downhill. And a lot of times the person in charge statistically is going to be a white male. And yes, I believe an older white male is specifically goes back to the patriarchy. So gender, white male. I did throw race in there because race is always a part of the equation, whether people want to admit it or not. And it's a lot of times black males or black people who identify as men will fall in line with the white patriarchy, and they're grasping at elements of things that make them feel just as powerful as somebody else may be. And it's about control. It really is about control. How much can I control? I need to have control, because when you're waving that baton, the control is right at your fingertips.
Takenya, that's deep. Right at your fingertips. You stop and start sound, but you also stop and start behavior. Like it's real crazy, like the power of the podium. And Justin said the majority of our hazing incidents have come from our older members of each and every band and organization. So it always has a big deal to do with it. Some people are grown, but they don't grow up. And so there's the age, like the old guys. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm being real honest. I've had some older gentlemen who are band directors clasp my hand too much and a little too intimately, because they come from a time where we were lesser and we didn't respond to that. We didn't, like I said, we didn't have a Me Too movement. And if you complain, you might not keep your job, or you might not be able to say anything. And so I'm sure that a lot of what we see now is not new. It's not new. Like, a lot of band directors have married their students. Let's just be honest. I'm not saying, maybe they're grown then, but that has a whole implication in itself. And I say marry their students. I'm not talking about women marrying or people who identify as women marrying their students. I'm talking about men. There are a lot of men who have married their students. And as a parent, I have a hard time believing that you didn't look at them before they were of age. Like, I'm sorry. Like, some people will sugarcoat shit and say they're grown, but I have a hard time saying when she was on the dance line, you didn't look at her, shake a little bit and have a thought. Like, I don't believe it. I'm not saying that you can't get older and the person matures and then you fall in love with the mature person. But if we're being honest about that rank and that authority, a lot of that stuff existed, even if, quote unquote, it was done at a legal age. It's still kind of grooming and predatory. We talk about grooming and predatory. But at the same time, I think some of the younger band directors, and I'm going to talk about men, and this is not saying that women don't abuse that power too. We might not just had enough, we might not have had enough cases that have come to the light. Let's just be real. I ain't going to sugarcoat that either. But at the same time, you turn on your timeline, you can almost guess. It's like school shootings. You can almost guess who did it. And you may not like the truth of it is, but we can almost say it's probably not a Black girl shooting up the school. How many cases we seen like that? And not saying we don't have our own issue, but let's be real. It's sometimes younger dudes who never grew up, older men who never grew up, and they got power, which is a dangerous mix.
They take that power, they use it, they misuse it, and they abuse it because they know that nothing or very little, if anything, will happen to them. Should they be accused of something? Should someone point the finger in their direction? Should someone identify them as a predator? Because these are things that are, it's prevalent, period, in our society. Period. It's not limited to just the band room. And to Lauren's point before about how bands started originally, they started from the military. And as a veteran myself, I've been in positions where I've said something and told it, and nothing happens. Like they just stick it in their file and they transfer that person somewhere else. So for the people who are brave enough and have the courage to speak up and say something, to find that their report falls on deaf ears repeatedly is not motivation for people to do something different. It's not motivation for people to stop doing what they should stop doing. This is, I don't want to make it all about the military, but this is, we never would have had a Vanessa Guillen. We never would have had a Vanessa Guillen if things were in place as they should have been.
Oh, Leah, you were unmuted. I didn't know if you wanted to speak or not.
It's okay. I was actually about to say the same thing, took the words right out of my mouth. So, yeah.
It's interesting that Takenya mentions that, all they do is just transfer them somewhere else. We see a lot of that. Going back to the band room, there have been scandals in the band room where that person has been fired, but then they got hired somewhere else. And I'm glad Krystal posed a question about, is it age or gender? I feel like if I've seen in males with male band directors, that they can go through a scandal, but then ultimately get hired somewhere else. Let a few years go along and then they get hired elsewhere. I'm not saying any specifics or anything, but this is just what I've seen. If I feel like if it were a woman, her career would be over. They would drag her through the mud. I think it's interesting because, with the men band directors, what I've also observed, is that type of scandal, they just kind of brush it over or try to keep it hush. But if it's a scandal involving money, they get rid of them quick. They get rid of them real quick. And we've seen it a few times. I've seen it twice from one band director. I've seen it once in another. So, I feel like the powers that be, they pick and choose what is acceptable to them and what is unacceptable to them. And when everything across the board, an abuse of power is an abuse of power, regardless of what the offense is. You shouldn't have to pick and choose which ones are better than the other. It's kind of like a sin is a sin type thing. So, yeah. That's all I have to say about
kind
that.
of par for the course with, just how we are as a country. I mean, look at our Supreme Court right now. Clearly, you can essay someone and still get anywhere you want to go as long as you maintain certain attributes, and those attributes may or may not change depending on the environment. But the part that Takenya said about like people not wanting to speak out, that's totally true. Like, most women, a lot of women have gone through this. And the few times that I have, like, it was like I ended up being the bad guy or just made to feel, gaslit or whatever. And it's just like after a while, it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna start cursing everybody out. Like, because you're trying to go through the proper channels and nobody wants to believe you. And unfortunately, a lot of, and not just band directors, like we're not gonna talk about some of these texts that come in sometimes, or some of these alum that come back in and be like, oh, I knew you but I graduated 2 years ago, but I'm gonna mess with this freshman. Like, it's a whole thing.
Yeah,
Leah,
it's very
you touched on that.
It's systemic. And there was a question to what Lia said, I didn't want to skip Chuck Stewart's answer. We have two Chucks. He said, I feel like the opportunity is the only variable, not age and sex. Uninvolved parents make it easier. I agree to some extent. I do think that access is a big deal. And I'm glad Lia touched on that because, certain programs, they'll hire alumni that aren't even in the field and they have that access to those students. And, there are certain places that don't do background checks or they know that person. It's like, oh yeah, they're alum. So yeah, let them come on in. There's no vetting process in some of these programs. So what needs to be done is a vetting process of experience, of criminal history, because this goes back into the people. They're grown, but they're not. They're grown-ups, but they're not grown. They're not grown minded. They want to go back and talk about their heyday or their glory days in the band, and try to keep the band a certain way. They want that control too. So abuse of power is not only with the leadership in the band, but it's also with the people and the volunteers that they bring back in, especially alumni. So yeah, I do agree with Lia, and I agree with Chuck Stewart as well. I think it's not. Opportunity is the biggest variable. I don't think it's the only variable, though. That's the only thing I disagree with.
You hit on something that I actually forgot to make it a question, and it was about vetting of staff, support staff. I've had some all out internet wars with some people about why you can't come work with my girls. At the time, I had all girls, so I really had to have that light bulb on of who gets to come into their space. And someone kind of, they came sideways at me. That's like, but you have a daughter, right? So I want you to think like this. Some of your boys, be honest, some of your homies, and that they don't always operate 100% morally when it comes to certain things. Why wouldn't someone want to vet? Like, why wouldn't you be comfortable with a background check? Is this something that I'm doing too much? Because that's what I was told. You doing too much. I was like, no, because if you screw this up, I'm fired too. And every situation that I've seen it up close and personal, it's not just the person who's guilty that gets fired. They clean house sometimes. It's happened to, a fraternity brother. Had nothing to do with whatever scandal. And it wasn't like a sexual kind, but they just assumed everybody knows what's going on when we work this closely. And so you can not know anything and still get that smoke. And so I was like, I gotta protect my bag. You're not worth, I almost make six figures now. You are nowhere near worth that. I will run the bus over you. So Justin asked the question, how do we, hold each other accountable? He said, we gotta protect the kids. We just have to. Like, they stop being your boy or your girl when they cross the line. That's the unfortunate, that's a hard pill to chew for Black people because we are very communal. We are. And in the band world, that multiplies times 10. We just have to. You have to put on a lens as the victim or the victim's loved ones. And then if you look from that lens, that will clear up a lot of your worry if you're concerned about, saying anything, because then it looks like your daughter or your son. And then you think about what you would want someone to do for you if you weren't in the know. That's what I wanted to say about it. Like, I kind of get yeah, they can have access, but we trust them with that access. So someone has to do the vetting, and then someone also has to be present. You got to be present. And then if you see a little, they tell us as educators, we're qualified reporters. We are mandatory reporters. Like if a kid comes to us, whether we believe them or not, the moment they part their lips, we have to go down to SST and get that form and get on that phone. And we don't get to make the decision of whether or not it happened or not. We don't get to make that decision. We are just held to the responsibility of, it's called locus parentis. It's a law that says that when you are in the care, when you are given a job where you have to care for people who are quote unquote considered vulnerable, local parentis means that you are the parent and you must act morally as a parent. But when you bring in all these extra staff daddies, they don't know the law. They not certified. They didn't take these education classes. They just know that back in the day, their boy was smashing a girl on the dance line too.
See, now as the teacher of record, as the locus parentis to the whatever Latin is, I took that and understood that to mean like I am acting as the parent. So there is no 3 strikes and you're out. We have to call that crap out immediately on site. It has to be called out because we are responsible for other people's children as our own. There is no like, oh, well, maybe I misunderstood, or check in with that gut, because that gut 9 times out of 10 is not leading you in the wrong direction. We ain't got time to be playing with other people's kids. Period. I don't want nobody playing with none of mine, and I don't play about nobody else's child either.
Miss Davis, what you think? She said that like, girl, this thing's spicy. Let me just say, you turned it to the lady in church like, What do you think? Do you think sex has a big role in it? You're in a different region, so there are a lot of women band directors up here, but I don't know in other areas.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about that. And we're talking about like when you said scandals, and my mind was everywhere. So I'm just sitting listening and trying to figure out, where to interject, because there are so many different types of scandals.
It can be money, sex,
right.
Immoral, abuse, what you name it, illegal.
Right.
Just put illegal.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, with what I've seen, where I work, the majority of situations with teachers or band directors messing around with students, they were all male. I can't think of a female, and I just always wonder, and it happened not only with the traditional style bands, it happened with with core style bands too. It was just always a band director, and I always wonder, I was like, well, what is it? I mean, and like it goes back to what a lot of you were saying about ego. I think the guys, they get in their ego. I think it makes them feel good to have a young lady be attracted to them. Kind of makes me think back to the Mr. Holland's Opus. Even though nothing but transpired there, but just to be seen, because their wives don't get to see them as much as these young students do. And so I just wish that someone would probably like educate them as to the legality of it and the moral. Like the one of the commenters made a comment about moral aptitude. I mean, where are your morals? You got to think of these kids as yours. But for some people, that could be hard too, because it's just you just try to educate people and tell them, hey, that's not right, that's not cool, and to prevent your buddies from looking at your students as a field day. Just hire people that have those. Because to me, like people off your boys or your girls that are not in education, they don't have anything to lose. And, you know, we have a degree, I mean, not a degree, but we have our certification that we can lose, you know, and that would be hard for us to move forward. And so in those situations, that's first it was the student. Second, it was me. And I know that's bad. I always put the kids before myself. But I would always explain, hey, you know, if something goes down, it's gonna fall back on me. Not to mention, I don't want this around my students. So that's all I had to say about that. I mean, it depends on the situation. So I just wish people would, you know, educate people about that. You know, it's not cool. It's not a good look for our profession. But even though, you know, I haven't seen any females, but I just know, you know, and I always think like, what do you see? These are kids. They barely know how to wash. Like, why? But you know, that's just those are my thoughts. And I'm gonna go.
They really know how to wash.
Girl, they stink. Like what? They have the maturity of a doorknob. Like, why? Why would you even? But it's not, you know, we all kind of think from a different perspective. Like we have that charge as adults to protect children. I want to unpack something. And this is, you know, this is one of them controversial moments. Are we saying that women have too much to lose to even entertain the idea? For me, that's what it is. Like, I would never get hired back. I would never you would never hire me back. You barely want to hire me. That's already the first fight. You would never hire my ass back. I've been accused, and we're going to talk about this. I've been accused of a long list of crap. And with every accusation, I will be like, really? But there's also that flip side, which we will talk about. There's the flip side where sometimes you've done nothing, but, you know, we also teach a different type of kid now. Like we gotta be real about that. It's a different type of kid, y'all. They're a little more in the know. Accountability with their actions are kind of not so present as it was when I was in school. So they learn how to manipulate earlier. They learn how to lie earlier to get what they want. They can be very vindictive, and that's like real. And I don't want anybody listening to this today to think that everybody who's accused is guilty, because I've been on that list and I was like, what? I've been audited. I was like, huh? Like sitting there, and thank God, you know, I was taught well to make sure my books were in order, to make sure that all my ducks were lined up. And I had some practices. Janae, I did want to address her question. There is training. We go through a lot of it. They have these trainings, like they have them annually. They have like harassment trainings and stuff. People just know. They know. But next question. Does the band world, and we talk about the band world, have an accountability issue?
There's some prevention and protocols that have to be exacted. And I think a lot of times it's baked in to how you conduct your band. It's baked into how you start rehearsals. It's baked into how, for instance, you're never alone in the room with a student without there being another adult present. You're always somewhere visibly seen by the masses if you're close enough to a student where something can be taken the wrong way. There's prevention and protocols that are already in place that's baked into how band is conducted. So it's not foolproof, but it's one measure. It's something.
I think Chuck kind of hit the nail on the head too about attention, because some people just, I mean, and men and women, like they just like the attention. And that goes back to our first like ego, you know, discussion that we were talking about earlier. So like, you know, like let's say like, you know, you just start teaching and like all the little boys want to come up and give you a hug. First of all, I'm quick with the stiff arm. Don't touch me. stay back there. You know, they might get that little side, I'm proud of you hug at graduation, like, okay, you know, peace out. But, you know, some people really like, oh my goodness, this person wants to come up and hug me every day. Nah, they just try to feel your titties, but it's okay, you know? Or, you know, some like people thrive off of attention. And I think sometimes it's really hard for certain directors to turn that off, especially when you're at the school all the time. It doesn't make it okay. Like they really need to stop and get over themselves, because at the end of the day, they're kids. Like this is gross to me. But you know, that attention thing, that's real, you know, and they get it wherever they can get it from. I don't know. I don't like it, but it is the thing.
I'm glad you said that, because let me tell you this, teaching all girls did not make me turn off that high sensitive button to my interactions. Because let's not act like girls don't like girls and boys don't like boys. And some of the scandals we're seeing now is starting to be that. Like, it's not just the male band director preyed on the dance line. It's starting to be like someone took somebody into their personal space and relationships happen. We're not even talking like just, you know, we're not talking like, I want to say, aggressively. We're not talking about rape in the formal sense of literally taking physical charge over somebody. Sometimes we are literally talking about people who quote unquote think they dating. Like that's, so I've had to kind of have the side hug or the elbow bump with girls. Like, hey, like I walked into a dance line conversation. I kid y'all not. And I heard two words. I heard a phrase, Miss Williams is cakey. I said, changed my entire mind blown. I was like, okay, let me make sure I wear a long t-shirt in front of them too. Because you're looking at my ass. And we don't think like that anymore. Like, we don't think like that. Chuck said the ego could be a messy thing. And sometimes it is like nobody, you know, band kids, like when we were in high school, some of us, like, we were nobodies. Like we were in, you know, we're band nerds. So they grow up now and they have like this position that makes them popular. Like it's popularity. But if you've ever seen somebody, a kid in school that gets popular all of a sudden, they don't know how to handle it because they've never been popular. So they make decisions that are messy. And I feel like a lot of these situations are like someone who all of a sudden has fame and they don't know how to act. We see celebrities do it all the time.
Or when people just cross something.
Ooh, that's another stuff. Listen, that's a whole nother. We're not gonna do that today. Don't you start that.
Oh Lord!
Don't you put that evil on me, Leah.
But
Because we all
true.
like,
But
we all
it's true.
I know we all players. We know. But is there accountability issue?
I
The
want to
dog-
answer
but-
this. Oh
My bad. Go ahead.
no, yeah, there's absolutely an accountability issue. From the director to the principal, sometimes to the parents. Sometimes the parents don't be checking in on their kids. I believe Chuck Stewart touched on that too. They don't. They just let their kids, you know, they don't check in, not just check on, but they don't check in, sit down and talk with them like, hey, you know, how was practice? You know, what are you guys doing? Like, they're not interested in their kids. Administrators, they don't want no form of scandal. So they either they try to brush it under, they want it to implode, not explode. So, you know, they want to do a lot of damage control if something happens. But as far as in the band world, you see comments on Facebook like, nah, my boy, he would never do that. This person, they would never. I don't believe it. I saw one comment where they said the child was fast. And yeah, that ended me right there, because that's the power dynamic right there.
And you know, sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
No, go ahead, Leah.
No, it just makes me so mad, because I think people forget like how they were when I like. Let me tell you something. When I was a freshman in high school, my Spanish teacher was so fine. Like me and my best friend were in that class, and he was like this young dude, and he was really cute. And we used to be like, oh my god, like. And as a 14-year-old girl, like had that grown man flirted with me, my 14-year-old brain would have been like, ooh, I'm so excited because you don't know any better. You know, now as an adult, I'm looking at it like okay, you know, I was a kid crushing, but like had he done or said something back, like that would have been entirely inappropriate. Like my frontal lobe was all like, you know, malnourished, and I wasn't, you know, I was a kid. But it doesn't matter what the kid does because the kid is gonna think like a kid. I thought my Spanish teacher was cute. He was real fine. Like me and my best friend used to be giggling. We used to sit right up front, get see senor. Like it was, you know, it was funny. But looking back, it's like I'm glad he was a good person because like that could have went real wrong, you know, because I was 14 and dumb. I didn't know any better. So like all these people blaming the kids, that's why I was kind of like, because kids don't know. Like they literally scientifically make stupid decisions because their brain's not done growing yet.
So these kids ain't fast.
You know. And they're not fast. They're
little. I was fast because my thighs were thick. That's not even
as fair, adults, you know? we have to tell we have to show them better than what they know or what they're feeling, because I do admit kids are hormonal, but I would never call the child fast, especially if something happened to them, because they're not mature enough to process what happened to them. And you know, it's a very, you know, that type of experience, a sexual experience, I'm going to say it, you know, it's a lot. And it's a lot for people, but for a child whose brains aren't developed, they're not fully mature, you know, it can unlock a lot of bad things that they weren't supposed to be exposed to until they're a certain age. And you can't go around saying, you know, these kids are fast. And you know, I was in education for a bit. They do be smiling in your face, whether they want something from you or you know, and kids, you know, they're touchy-feely. They're touchy-feely, they're germy. They you know, they love to touch everything and everybody because kids are emotional. That's just what they do. But that doesn't mean reciprocate it. You know, you have to tell them, even at the kindergartners, you know, you say this is a, you know, bad touch. I don't, you know, to me, this is a bad touch. And that's something you would need to tell their parent. You would need to tell a lead teacher or an administrator what happens to cover yourself. Just like I think Chuck said that, like you have to tell an administrator. And yeah, I'm with that because it covers you in the process. He also mentioned how they're getting this attention for the first time. And they think those types of touches like, oh my God, you know, they're really into me. They are kids. Kids do what they do because they want attention from you. But you have to be the one to recognize like, okay, they're just acting on their emotion. You know, they're acting their age. And you have to set that boundary because you are the adult and they're the child.
Somebody in that room needs to be fully developed cognitively, and it needs to be the adult.
Because these kids ain't fast. These children are preyed upon by predators who groom them into a trusting relationship. There's a recent share, if anybody follows the Carbon Essence on Facebook, where a young man revealed how he was preyed upon by someone who took him to church, picked him up from school every day, and was his first experience because of how that woman groomed him and because of her position in church and the way she was perceived by her peers. No one would ever have suspected her of doing what she did. And here you have this young adult man dealing with the repercussions of things that he felt it doesn't exactly feel right, but I don't know exactly what to say because the person that I trust is telling me that this thing that we're doing is okay. And I don't know where somebody was in his life who missed a cue or missed a signal or ignored cues and signals, but the kids will speak without saying a word. We have got to pay attention. We've got to keep paying attention. And you mentioned checking in and checking on. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't always know where my kids are. I don't. I'm gonna be honest. I don't always know where they are, but I always have a way to get in contact with them, or they know how to get in contact with me. I do try to have some kind of one-on-one engagement. I got a lot of kids in this house, y'all. I got a lot of kids in the house. Ella, ain't that right? Yeah. She's like, yeah, yeah. She's like, don't talk to me right now. Yeah, but yeah. Do what, girl? She's making my Pinterest board for my studio remake. Thank you, 15-year-old child over there. But I don't always know where my kids are, but I try to arm them with enough information to behave in such a way that gets them back home to me and that teaches them how to tell it if something ain't right. So from the 7-year-old who's going to be 8 on Tuesday, all the way up to the 18-year-old who graduates high school in 11 days, I've empowered them with the language to use to talk and tell it from the time that they, you give them age appropriate language. Yeah. The 7-year-old knew he had a penis when he first started touching it. Oh, that's your penis. That's for you. People have to ask permission to be down there, and other explanations that were age appropriate. Oh, and I wanted to ask Still Kicking, because Still Kicking mentioned that they record their practice sessions. Like that's another ounce of prevention that goes in, like recording everything so parents can see that we ain't making this stuff up. We ain't making it up. Your kid really did it.
Yeah, and they're really starting to have cameras in classrooms, like especially post-pandemic. One of the side effects is, people teaching in their classroom virtually and having to, video themselves in for accountability because they didn't think we were really in the building working, which is already kind of trifling mess. But out of that, now there are permanent cameras in people's classrooms. So there's a little bit of level of accountability, but there's the thing that Lauren touched on, Lia touched on, the fact that access, why does this person have so much access to your child? Like there is a line. I don't care how much my son likes, the science teacher. I don't care. It's just some things I will pick him up. I will drop him off. You don't ever have to worry about bringing him home. You don't ever have to worry about that because that's my job as a parent to fill in those things. The problem, though, happens with the children who don't have that adult in their life. So I do kind of agree, kind of running it back, that access thing does create the perfect breeding ground for a predator. We watched the R. Kelly stuff, and a lot of times the parents put the children in the devil's lair. Like we're not talking, and even repeatedly after years of allegations, all it takes is one for me. Just take one for me before I'm like, no, I don't get to test this theory with my child. I don't get to test that theory. So when we talk about accountability issue, I'm gonna bring up the elephant in the room. How many people we know who have actually been held accountable to an allegation? So an allegation goes from allegation to fact because the law tried it and they had enough proof to say that this did happen or something to the sort happened, and they're hired again. What message does that send out accountability wise? What does it really say? Elephant in the room. Nobody want to talk about it because they know how to make a good band. They get them kids to crank up.
I've honestly only seen one situation, and we all have known multiple people who have, like little kids or whatever, but I've only seen one situation where I felt like the person was adequately held accountable and he's in jail. The other people disappeared for a little while. The next thing you know, oh, so-and-so's at so-and-so's school now, or look, so-and-so's back on Facebook. Oh, you're showing your face again? Oh, okay. Oh, you're now the band director here. So, I think it in my opinion, I don't think people are held accountable enough. Like I said, I only know one person that's where they need to be, but you know.
Do we love the culture so much that we protect it to a fault?
I don't.
Yeah, but we all have one thing in common on this screen right now. I'm talking about
you mean like the band culture?
Right.
Like I said, some of the comments I've been seeing online, it seems to be so. They're willing to protect that person in order to protect the culture, and that actually makes the culture look worse. You know, they're always defended for somebody instead of just taking them out of the equation. It could be just as simple as that, like, gone. And I think that actually protects the culture, but you know, people don't want to speak up, or they say it's none of their business, or you know, they just say, I pray everything works out and keep it moving. You know, the thoughts and prayers. So yeah.
Still Kicking just said that somebody left one school, was rehired at that same school, and did the same thing again. Just WTF, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. What are we doing?
That's stupid.
You better you're crazy, but that's it. I had to think about this. I thought about this today. I know 10 music educators that I've met that have met an allegation and either was terminated or a charge brought that are still teaching. Period. 10. I know one, like you, Lia, that actually it went all the way through a process. I know one. Actually, I know two. But they be our boys. And I think there's a disbelief because they have other attributes that are so positive in our eyes. Like for the culture, they protect the culture. They understand the culture. They, you know,
these people protected R. Kelly for years.
Years. Talked about what she looked like she knew what she was doing. What the is wrong with y'all? Like, do y'all hear this mess when y'all say it out loud? She knew what she was doing. Let it be your daughter. It'll be like a time to kill. We already know some of us. It'll be like a time to kill. They won't be no legal system because you don't already really trust it anyway. You would take all the matters into your hand behind your most precious. And I'm gonna say even more stereotypically, your girls. You wouldn't. You would have a whole fit. Charles said some folks don't care if they crank and flap their hands. They just get a new job. Yes, they do. For the culture, they got all these other things going for them. But how many other things that we don't get that second chance? Like we brought up stealing money. It's almost like stealing money is a lesser offense. Stealing money, you'd never get hired again if you mess with the bag. Yep.
It's a bigger offense.
Yeah.
How we roll here in America. I mean, money trumps all here. It's unfortunate. I hate it. Try to move, but that's how things are here. Capitalism at all costs.
At all costs.
Who can grease others' palms? You scratch my back, I scratch your back. I think that's a core operational function of the society that we live in. And if you don't know who you need to know, you can't grow where you're trying to get to.
So
yeah, it's like, yeah, money is a bigger offense because if you mess with the money, you get fired. But if you mess with your students, but if you bring in money, you know, we could just kind of push that under the rug or have student transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Notoriety. If you bring in notoriety to the school name and the program, they'll make those headlines disappear. Them headlines will go all the way to the last page, if any. And it is what it is. Like, or they'll hire somebody back, and then, you know, I'll be confused sometimes because I'm like, don't you have to have a background check? I'd really be confused. That's like, don't you have to? Who is sliding that background daddy under the rug? Because that's what's happening. Y'all gotta be hiding that joint under the rug. I could speak of a personal experience where I talked to someone. They said, I didn't know he was fired. It didn't even exist in the record. It didn't exist. Like, I was like, how'd you go from another place? And that little thing just never quite made it. Maybe, you know, there's a lack of accountability on HR or whoever does the vetting, where they look at the name and they don't even follow through on the process. Maybe that's it with accountability. Like, people aren't actually doing their job due diligence because they trust the name and the product so much that they can't be anything else that they care about. I got a question. I might have to rephrase it. Is stress a factor in whether a band director or staff decides to break bad? Is stress a possible factor?
I think it's more stressful to do right, because you have to be consciously, like, continuously conscious of all those little things. Like, even in the training, like, there's some situations where it's like, it may not look bad, but it could be like, and if you're actively trying to, you know, do what you're supposed to be doing while, you know, maintaining a successful band program, I think that's more stressful, because, like, hell, you could just go and do whatever you want. And that's not really stressful. You're just kind of doing what you want, and you deal with whatever consequences later, if any.
When I think about stress, I think about the amount of time that some of us don't spend at home as band director. Like, I think about that as a stressor. So it was so much that I had to make a change, not in career, but how I was doing it. Because you don't see, you know, you don't have time to date. You don't have time to, you know, do a lot of things that the regular adult gets to do. And it can be lonely. Like, it can be lonely. And like you said, like, you got somebody paying attention to you. You might go home every night by yourself, but for 7 to 8 hours a day, somebody's paying attention to you and praising you and giving you that dopamine. Like, let's be real. There's a fix that people get sometimes out of this. And I like to say, like, when it comes to sexual nature with children, I completely think there's the criminal part, but then there's a psychological issue, that why we can see someone get fired or get an accusation, they quit, because sometimes they just hurry up and quit before it comes to fruition. And then they go somewhere else to do the same damn thing. And I always ask, why did you do it again? Like, you barely escaped. And I'm like, because there's a fix. It's like an addict. Like, I got that. I know I can get that type of love and attention in this field, because we already said why. Like, it's militaristic. You get put on that pedestal or whatever. So
at the end of the day, you got to be okay with your decisions. The decisions that you make, are they the kinds of decisions that will let you rest and slumber peacefully? Because people will do something strange for some change. Is stress a factor? And whether a band director decides to break bad, I think to a certain extent, yes. Because honestly, I'm a little bit stressed about summer scheduling for me, because my children have to be in certain places during times when normally I would be teaching. So I can't teach during the time that I would normally be earning a living. I have to go pick up my kids. I have to pick them up. And so there's this little bit of worry. I'm just being honest here. There's just this little bit of worry tied to how will that affect my income? Because And so I have to be okay with whatever decision I make regarding how I set my schedule up so that I can be available to my kids when they need me to be there. But that's not gonna have me standing out on the corner slanging piano notes and singing. I'm not gonna go that far, I mean, people will do something strange for some change.
Yeah, that money factor. I've heard people defend it when it's a money scandal, and then teachers that we don't make a lot. And band directors don't get paid for all those extra hours. We really don't get paid our worth. Nobody really in the country does, but we can all say that teachers are really kind of towards the lower end of that totem pole for how much education we have to have. We have to continuously pay for school, continuously to stay certified, continuously taking classes and getting trainings and whatever. That costs us money. So I can see how, you might look at the money that's in this envelope and be like, shit, I got to pay my BG&E. I got to pay my utilities. I could put it back later. Like those are real things, I think, real issues, and it's stress related. Like if you don't know how you're going to eat or your own kid's going to eat, it could be real easy to move that dollar here and move that dollar there and just say, well, nobody's checking me because they don't come down. They don't even know what the band do outside of, the performances they see. They don't really know how much work goes into keeping this whole thing afloat. So I think stress, that's my opinion, especially when it comes to money. I think people get desperate and they make bad decisions like anything.
Oh, for sure.
Being a band director is already a high stress job because you're your own bookkeeper, you're your own conductor, sometimes you're your own arranger. Sometimes it could be a one-man show, and you don't have the support that you need in order to, like you said, Krystal, keep it afloat. So I would say I understand the reasoning behind why some band directors, like financially, like if they break bad, as stress related, because it's so much to deal with. But also, as band directors, a lot of them know what they're coming into, and we've had, not we, but because I was a music major, band directors have had the training. They, if they do it right, they'll have a mentor band director that they could talk to about how to do certain things, about how to run their program. So I feel like if they, I would suggest if they do think about Breaking Bad, I know it's easier said than done. They need to talk to somebody. They need to go to somebody that's older with more experience, and talk to them about how they can move forward in whatever decision-making process they have. People do different things for different reasons. I feel like stress can be a factor, but it's also an excuse. Everybody goes through stress. It's how you deal with it. It is what determines your character. Just because you have access, whether it be, we talk about students or money, that doesn't mean you should do it because you're in a position of responsibility. So that has to be kept first in order to help through whatever it is that you're going through.
We just get held to the same type of charge that doctors do, and lawyers. Like we kind of unwrittenly take an oath, like we do, to have to be held accountable to a different level because we have people in our care, like even in the medical field or police officers. And they're high stress jobs. Like they're very high stress jobs. And as much as I get it, I agree. And we don't have Lia said, we don't have doctor lawyer pay. So it makes it a little easier to make a bad decision because you feel like you got nothing to lose anyway. If you only making, 30K and you got a master's degree and you teaching with, it makes it real easy to make a decision to fill that gap. I think so. Not saying that it excuses it, but it just makes it a little harder to be a little more morally sound. So this is the next question. Are false accusations really the culprit in the increase of scandals in the band world? And I asked this because, like you said, Lauren, the comment section, sometimes I just cannot, I have to really learn how to not read it. Especially when it comes to acts of a sexual immorality with children. Because the defense of it, I mean, it's become false accusations exist. I'll be real upfront. I took my kids to Hershey Park. It was the first out-of-state trip I ever had planned for my students, high school. I had a bunch of seniors that was like, well, we can't afford to go. We got all these senior things. So when I told them about the week of, I said, I had already paid the invoice, the school out of the band account. And when up here, you don't touch any money. You just have to turn in the invoice and somebody writes a check from the money that's available. And it was like a few seniors. And I said, well, just get on the bus. Why? Because that morning I'd already gone to the bank and taken out about $200 to cover their ticket at the gate. Like that was something I said, I want to try to give them a good memory. And at the gate, I had a parent with me. They saw me swipe my card. Thank God I had the right type of supports behind me, because Monday I got called to the office because there was an allegation that I charged the students for a free trip. And I was like, what? And you know why? Because I paid for 4 students who did not have the money to go. And it was exacerbated by those 4 students talked to a former band student who was at another school. They got kicked out or whatever, because of the grades or whatever. And that student went to Hershey Park for Music in the Parks too, but their school paid for everyone to go because they are Title I school. So you know what happened? My administrator didn't know anything about the band world in those trips, or even the finances. Like, she's hands off. All she went on was someone said this lady, she took money from these kids, $75 a kid, which is the ticket and the food, right? We know what those little, if you ever been to a Music in the Park music festival, that ticket is about $50 is the cost of entry. And then if you get the little meal plan, that's about $20 more for them to eat endlessly, whatever that meal plan is. And I had to pull every receipt I had all year. And thank God I had a mentor that told me how to keep good books. But please believe people still think that I stole a bunch of money. That's how accusations work. And I was sitting there and I was mad at myself because my husband was like, did you take $200 out this morning? I was like, yeah, but I'm trying to, I teach in Baltimore. They might not ever get a chance like this. And that joint kicked me in the butt. So now, tears and all, you can't go. You ain't got the money. You can't go. Well, I find somebody sponsor you out of their pocket, but I never do it again. So how many of these are actually false accusations? We might not never know. I don't know what y'all think.
I've seen someone be falsely accused before, and I saw the stress that person went through in trying to maintain a clean name. And on the outside looking in, I would never want to trade places because there are no repercussions for the person who falsely accuses someone. So the person who was falsely accused is probably still dealing with the residuals from being falsely accused, whereas the person who did the false accusation is living a best life.
there's no support group for when you've been falsely accused and it's made it out into the public, and then they quietly sometimes say, oh no, this didn't happen. I mean, it's the accusation definitely gets a lot more airplay than, oh sugar, we stop. Nothing happens. And that kind of breaks my heart, because it also opens the door for more people to do it. After that point, every time I try to tell the students to do something discipline-wise, the 4 girls, they acted a complete ass. I'm gonna just say it. They be in the hallway. Oh, Miss so-and-so, she's threatening us, because they learned that I could be very quickly the bad guy and no one would believe me. And it's sad, like it follows you for the rest of your life. Like in a lot of cases, like you can't do anything to undo it. And so I wanted to bring it up because it's got to be to a point, but like just as much as we're verbal about when somebody is accused, we also need to be equally verbal about when, you know, the proof, the burden of proof. Look at Michael Jackson. He went to his grave. He went to his grave after somebody said 10, 15 years later, oh no, it didn't really happen. You know, I was coerced to say these things. Wow. So I don't know if it's the increase of scandals are more so because of phones and digital evidence.
I think so. And I'm just going to say, because, you know, growing up through being in band, I've heard of so many things go on, like not so much high school, but like when I got to college, like so many stories, but they ended there because there was no cell phone or YouTube or social media platform. You know, it was all hearsay. So they're just stories that people share with each other about things that quote unquote happen. And the only real way we would know is like for instance, and this is college, like one of the professors married their student, and you know, now they're married. So like, oh, maybe it was true because now they're married. But yeah, I mean, there are so many things going on back then that, you know, we would hear about as students, but it ended there. Like, but now people put stuff all over these social media sites, and it just snowballs and it gets the ball rolling. Now everybody know everybody's business, you know. So I think that kind of makes it known to others. Because I will say, you know, whatever went on in our bedroom was supposed to stay in our bedroom. But with these new students, this new generation, they're not following the same rules as we used to follow.
Culture changed, and Robert Champion kind of sparked it, and some other scandals changed that culture. Ultimately, this is the last question. I know Lia and Shell, you gotta go. Would having a more diverse staff help decrease the frequency of scandals in the bedroom? And why I mean more diverse, I'm not just talking gender, I'm talking about, you know, LGBTQ plus. I'm talking about age differences of staff. I'm talking about regionally different, like you're from somewhere else. You're not from the school, because that's a big thing. Sometimes things get passed on because they came from it. So they never saw it as bad because that's how their band ran. And now they're in charge of that band, and like they're still doing what was kind of taught to them. So do you think having more of a broader spectrum of a person on staff or the leader might decrease some things?
Different perspectives would be very helpful in preventing somebody's feelings from getting hurt, because a lot of times we're ignorant. I don't know everybody's lived experience. So there are definitely some things that I'm ignorant of. However, I still try to be respectful to the extent that I'm aware of things. So if there's someone else who has a different lived experience that can add value, by all means, bring them to the team. I need them. I want you. I need you. Help me, help you, and people who are like you, so that I don't make mistakes that have people spiral down to places we don't want people to spiral down to. Help me, help you.
Help me, help you.
To go off of what Takenya was saying, I feel like there needs to be people with different career backgrounds that in the field of music, and also like I guess a psychologist. I My thing is band programs, they need to be treated like football teams or basketball teams. Um, you need different people in different places in order for it to be effective. Like you always have to have a nurse. I feel like you need somebody that's at least security or who's been in the police force. You need somebody that deals with mental health. I think you need people with different backgrounds, so it won't be so I want to say the word is homogenous, that there's not one type of thinking. Well, like the king has said, different perspectives. um I think, and also it'll help it. How do I want to say this? um and I'm actually at a loss for words. I just feel like different, you need to have people that are neutral. You need to have neutral parties. um People that, I know we don't want to bring strangers into the band room, but also you need people that are not invested in the program as much, because a lot of these problems come from people who are so invested into the program, they want to make it go their way. So having that neutral ground, having those few people that are neutral will actually even out the perspectives. It'll have the band director and whoever else is in leadership thinking think in different ways. Like have a teacher from the school be on band staff that has nothing to do with band. You know, that's just my thought.
I'll add have parents present as much as possible. Someone who is tried and true and trusted with the program, that knows the program, knows you, but also knows how to have an eye and knows legally what's acceptable as well. Like just having, I agree. I want to say validity. It brings validity to your program that is actually a organized um, entity that does operate like a business. It makes it more business like. And a lot of people don't like that word and band. And I know some folk, we're not going to talk about the mass bands things, but that's always been my gripe, is that it's fun activity. But when you involve children, you have to. It's not even like, I know it's not fun, but you have to think like that for your own good. Like, and I've heard people admit, like, oh, in mass band scene, yeah, the adult stuff be happening, but they're having fun, they're not on the street. But what if like we're now the danger to them? And we were trusted with them. That could kill the whole culture too. So
I was gonna say make sure you have the right parents, because you have some parents that have alternative motives. So you don't know messy parents, make sure you know which parents to not have around. Speaking from experience.
Crystal, I'm glad you touched base on the mass bands. So this is the arts administrator coming out. Yay. So I really think they should be nonprofit organizations with a board of trustees to make decisions, because it seems like, I don't know, if somebody would like to call in who has experience with the mass bands, please, by all means, please call in and tell me how your mass band works, because it is good that people from a community are getting together and they're playing. But I am a part of I actually have been a part of 3 community bands. Well, 4 community bands. And there were officers, there was a president, a secretary, a treasurer. And if you have an organization that big where you have 300-400 kids, you guys have to have it has to be organized in that way, which is, and that's where the board of if you become a 501c3 organization, that's where the board of trustees come in. And the board of trustees, they're usually not affiliated with the band at all. That's why I say you need to have somebody that's neutral. They're different people from the community, whether you have one person for the school system, person that works for the city, person works for the county or the state, they have to be it has to be organized in such a way that you're doing things ethically, because here's another thing. By it being a nonprofit, nobody owns it. So to the band directors over the mass band, if you decide to make it a nonprofit, it's not your band. It belongs to the public. You have to realize it's not your band. And with that being done, it eliminates a lot of the problems that goes on. And it helps a lot with logistics whenever you have a mission, a vision statement, and you have a protocol and SOP, standard operating procedures. But yeah, I'm glad Krystal mentioned that.
And Freeman said a lot of the mass bands are started by non-graduates. Some of them struggle with participation, others struggle to find instruments, rehearsal sites. And I've heard that's a common thing. And so I've heard kind of like some horror stories of a band director opens up their space and then their stuff go missing. Or like there's an invasion of that space, or things aren't returned in the same condition, or something happens, fight happens. Let me tell y'all this legally, if it happens on school grounds and you're the teacher that works at that school, they can hold you accountable for the actions of others. Like I always had this argument. People like, well, if they didn't do it, I was like, y'all don't understand the law. Really, some of y'all need to get y'all asses on YouTube University and really find out what's legal, because some of y'all defenses wouldn't hold up in court. Like, I'm just telling you, I have a master's in education. Freeman, you right. Like, not saying all mass bands run sloppy and messy, because they don't. The ones that I feel like sometimes run the best are the ones where educators are the ones kind of leading it, or they're part of its organizational system. So I kind of like that, because it's also a tie into school and the community. Like, you get a double dip versus somebody who may not know or may not be abreast to all of the different things that happen educationally. Laws change. Operating procedures change. And sometimes if you haven't been in a classroom in 20, 30 years, you just don't know the answer. And don't fight. I'm tired of people fighting people who have to sign contracts every year to keep their bag. Like, we know, we're not making it up. We're not trying to like hurt your feelings. We know, and we know what's at stake. So, anybody ever want to argue with me, I'm going to go straight to that textbook. I took a law and ethics class in education for my master's, and some of the stuff that teachers go down for will have some people jaws drop. Like, what? But law is law. So it is 7:29, and we've been on for an hour and 30 minutes. I don't know if anybody wanted to come in and have their input. We dropped the link. I haven't seen any message from, Charlie behind the screen. So I guess, any last thoughts, ladies, before we roll out?
I was just going to say, they tell us, people say you can't worry about what people think. But in the field, and what we do, because we're always under a microscope, we have to always think about what it may seem or what it may look like. And I was just gonna say, if it looks like you're doing something crazy, then you may not be. You shouldn't be doing it. You may not want to do it, because appearance is everything, especially in the public eye. And band directors are always in the public eye. And you're always going to have someone out there that's looking for something to turn against you, because for whatever reason you might even know this person. So you just got to be careful in the way you carry yourself. And this is for those people that try to do the right thing. Those that choose to do the other, they're going to do those things, but I'm just looking out for those that want to lead their programs by not breaking hard. Is that the phrase?
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. See, I'm sorry. Without breaking bad, always be conscious of what it may appear to be, and that goes with, like, I know I've broken bad, by taking students home when I wasn't supposed to. But I knew nobody was coming to pick them up. And when I took them home, there wasn't a car in the yard, and I just prayed to God, Lord, just have dominion over this car. Dominion, I think that's the word I'm looking for, while I take this child home, because if anything had happened, I would have been liable. But, it was always for the benefit of the students, not myself. And in situations like that, I would always have my sons with me if I had to take a young man home. I always had my sons with me if I had to take a young lady home. But I always made sure that they called everybody they could call before I, and I would explain that, at meetings. I didn't want to do that, but back in those early days of my teaching, sometimes that's what I had to do. But you always got to be conscious of what it looks like to others. Talking with students, having conversations with students, even teachers. Because kids will see you talking to Mr. Thompson and be like, oh, you, don't do that. And like one of the commenters mentioned, you got to shut that down quick. You like quick, because kids will take it and roll with it. So that's just my words of advice to future or current band directors.
That's good advice too.
I just want to say remain vigilant for our children, because they're counting on us. Just remain vigilant.
Like I said, I'm not a band director, but always protect yourself. Protect yourself. Do the smart thing. Sometimes the right thing is not the smart thing. Do the smart thing. Like Anshel said, think about how it looks. Sometimes we always don't think about, well, how does it look? And like older band directors, they don't care how it looks. Like now you gotta care you a little bit, about how it looks. And be about your students, but also be about your bag too. You have to protect your career, your family, your reputation. You're dealing with people, you're dealing with young people, and with that, you always have to be aware of your surroundings. Yeah, that's it on that. But I would like to say I just completed year 1 of grad school. Praise God.
The shout music. Yep. Put her in A flat.
Yes, an A flat.
Yes.
Yes, all the black keys except for C and G. Let's get it. I've completed. Actually, no, this week I have my jury tomorrow, and I have to do graduation for Morgan, and that's it. And I'm finished with American for the semester as well. Year 1. Thank you, Jesus. I'm done. Praise God. That's all I want to say.
Need some walking music.
Yes.
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 Try to put us in.
Oh, no, don't end it like that. I wanted to resolve.
Some of us need some.
I must resolve.
Yes, you must resolve. But
we need some moral compasses around these babies. We need some moral compasses. And the minute that you
play that behind Krystal, she's pretty.
Yeah, you can come on, put me. You go back. I ain't done yet. Sometimes when you are taking charge of a group of children, you have to remember it ain't about you. It's about the children. And the minute that you sacrifice them for you is the minute that you might be behind bars. So for the sake of the bag, for the sake of, let me say it again, for the sake of the bag. Woo! It's in my spirit. Woo! Okay, don't play with it now. You gotta protect. Why? That's what I'm saying. All hearts, mind, and clear. Hit that share, daddy. Hit that like, daddy. We are. It's okay, you dumb.
I'm weak.
Every week I got something for y'all.